He is running. Not jogging. Not hurrying. Running the way a person runs when something inside them has completely broken. Arms pumping, head down, sneakers barely keeping contact with the ground. The timestamp on the footage is July 8, 2014. The location is Varna Airport, Bulgaria. The man in the frame is 28 years old, and his name is Lars Mittank. He passes the check-in counters. He passes the other passengers. He does not slow down. He does not look back. He exits through the terminal doors, crosses an open car park in broad daylight, and approaches a tall security fence at the airport's perimeter. He scales it. He lands on the other side, and then he runs into the tree line, past the edge of the frame, and out of the world entirely. He left behind his luggage, his wallet, his passport, his phone. He was never seen again. What you just watched is not a movie. It is real. And the question that has haunted everyone who has ever seen that footage, investigators, journalists, his family, and more than 16 million strangers on the internet, is the same question that has no answer. What was he running from? Lars Joachim Mittank was born in Berlin on February 9, 1986. He grew up and eventually settled in Marne, a quiet town in the Schleswig-Holstein region of northern Germany. To the people who knew him, he was ordinary in the most reassuring sense of the word. He worked at the port of Wilhelmshaven, Germany's only deep-water port and largest naval base. He had a long-term girlfriend. He supported Werder Bremen with the particular devotion that football fans in Germany understand as a way of life. He was close with his parents. He was, by every account, a grounded, uncomplicated young man who had never given anyone reason for alarm. In late June of 2014, Lars and 5 of his friends packed their bags and flew to Bulgaria. It was his first time leaving Germany. They chose Golden Sands, a resort town on the Black Sea coast, just north of Varna, popular among European tourists for its long beaches, warm water, and cheap alcohol. It is a place built almost entirely around the idea of unthinking pleasure. In the summer of 2014, the World Cup was playing on every television in every bar. The sun was out. The crowds were thick and good-natured. For 5 days, Lars was entirely himself. Paul Roman, one of his friends, would later describe it to German television. We relaxed on the beach, swam in the pool, played football, went clubbing. He was relaxed. He was in a good mood. Another friend, Tim Schult, mentioned that Lars hadn't been eating much, mostly small bowls of soup, small salads. But nothing alarming. Nothing that made anyone stop and look twice. The trip was supposed to end on July 7th. It did not. On July 6th, the second to last night of the vacation, the group went out. There was a bar, and there was an argument. Lars was a Werder Bremen supporter in a room that apparently contained supporters of Bayern Munich, and what began as the kind of football disagreement that happens 1,000 times a night across Europe escalated into something else. At some point in the evening, Lars separated from his friends. He told them he was fine. He went off alone. He came back the next morning. He was beaten up. Injured jaw, ruptured eardrum. He said, according to documented accounts, that the men from the bar had hired people to attack him. A doctor examined him, confirmed the eardrum damage, and told him he could not fly. Not yet. Pressure changes at altitude would risk serious complications. He was prescribed an antibiotic, cefprozil, a cephalosporin, and told to wait. His friends offered to stay. He said no. He told them to go home as planned, that he would follow in a day or two, once the doctor cleared him. They were reluctant, but Lars insisted. He checked out of the resort the same morning they left and checked into the hotel color, a budget hotel close to Varna Airport, alone. He was 28 years old. He was in a foreign country for the first time in his life. He was injured, and his friends were gone. And that was the moment, it seems, when something began to come apart. The Hotel Colors security cameras were not remarkable cameras. They were the kind of small, grainy, wide-angle lenses you find in cheap hotels the world over, positioned in hallways and elevators not to document anything meaningful, but simply to technically qualify as security. What they happened to record, in the hours after Lars Mittank checked in alone, became some of the most analyzed footage in the history of missing persons cases. It shows him pacing back and forth down the hotel corridor, again and again, his body language tight and agitated. It shows him approaching windows and looking out, not the idle, bored glancing of someone waiting for time to pass, but something more urgent, more scanning. It shows him stepping into the elevator and then not going anywhere, just standing inside it, hiding in it, as if the small sealed space of a lift offered protection that the hallway did not. At some point in the night, he left. Around 1 a.m., surveillance shows him exiting the hotel. Where he went during those hours is not known. He came back before morning. He called his mother. Sandra Mittank later described that call in detail, in interviews, with a kind of quiet devastation that belongs only to people who have replayed a moment 10,000 times. Her son was whispering, not speaking, whispering. He told her that 4 men were coming to kill him. He told her to cancel his credit cards. He said he was hiding. She could hear, she said, the sound of his heartbeat over the phone. She thought, God, my son is in danger. He also texted her. He asked about his medication. The morning of July 8th, he texted her again to say he was at the airport. What happened inside Varna Airport in the early morning hours of July 8th has been reconstructed from security footage and from the account of one man, Dr. Kosta Kostov, the airport's on-duty physician. Lars Mittank arrived at the airport with his luggage. All of it. Bag, wallet, passport, phone. He was, to all appearances, preparing to fly home. He went to see Dr. Kostov for a checkup, a final clearance before boarding. According to Kostov, Lars was nervous from the moment he walked in. Erratic, distracted. But Kostov examined him and found that he was physically well enough to fly. He told Lars so. Lars did not leave the office. He lingered. He expressed doubt about the medication he'd been prescribed. He seemed unconvinced by the doctor's reassurance. And then, at some point during the consultation, a construction worker entered the examination area. The airport was undergoing renovation at the time. It was an ordinary thing, a worker moving through a space he had legitimate business in. No threat, no confrontation. Something in Lars Mittank snapped. He began to tremble. He yelled, the words documented, remembered clearly by Dr. Kostov decades later. I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here. He stood up. He ran out of the office. He left everything behind. The airport's cameras picked him up immediately. He moved through the terminal not like a man confused, not like a man lost, but like a man who has decided with absolute certainty that he has to get out of that building right now. He passed the check-in counters. He passed the other passengers. He went through an exit. He crossed the car park. He reached the perimeter fence, a significant fence, tall, not something you climb casually, and he scaled it. He landed on the other side, and he ran into the adjacent field. He ran toward the forest beyond. The last frame is him sprinting, eyes forward, everything else left behind. He vanished. The search began within hours. Bulgarian police were notified. Initial teams swept the wooded areas surrounding the airport. Dogs were brought in. Drones were deployed. The forest beyond the perimeter is not vast wilderness. It is scrubland and tree line on the edge of a functioning international airport. The kind of place a person shouldn't be able to disappear in. And yet there was no body, no clothing, no footprints that led anywhere conclusive. No phone signal, because the phone was back in the terminal. No bank activity, because the wallet was in the bag that was still sitting in Dr. Kostof's examination room. Lars Mittank had removed every technological thread by which a modern person can be located. Not intentionally. He'd simply left everything behind in his panic, but the effect was the same. He was a person moving through the world with no cards to trace, no devices to ping, no money to spend at a counter where a camera might record his face. The German Federal Criminal Police Office, the BKA, became involved, coordinating with Bulgarian authorities through Interpol. Sandra Mittank hired a private investigator, Andreas Gutig, who spent months reviewing hospital records, canvassing for witnesses, following up on leads. The German tabloid press and international true crime communities became obsessed. The airport footage, once shared online, accumulated views at a rate that said something about how deeply the image unsettled people. 16 million views by 2018, less than 4 years after he vanished. Lars Mittank was dubbed, with an uncomfortable mix of fascination and grim irony, the most famous missing person on YouTube. None of it brought him home. The question that investigators and journalists and armchair theorists have returned to again and again is the one that Dr. Kostof himself admitted he cannot answer. Why? Why did a construction worker entering a room trigger that response? Why, in the days before, had Lars become so certain that men were following him? And what happened between the night he was beaten up in a bar and the morning his personality, by all prior accounts stable, warm, unremarkable, became something his own mother barely recognized over the phone? There are theories. They are worth examining carefully, which means examining them without the comfort of certainty. The antibiotic cefprozil belongs to a class of drugs, cephalosporins, that carry documented, if rare, neurological side effects. In some cases, these include paranoia, hallucinations, and acute anxiety. Sandra Mittank, alongside some doctors consulted in the case's aftermath, suspected this possibility. A drug reaction could explain the sudden onset. The timing corresponds. But Dr. Kostof, who was with Lars in those final moments, said something that complicates this theory entirely. Lars had never filled the prescription. He had not taken the medication at all. So his behavior couldn't have been a result of that, Kostof said in a documented interview. I can't think of a single reason why he left my office in such a panic. I'm still confused. There is the possibility of an undiagnosed psychiatric condition. The profile fits certain patterns. A first acute psychotic episode often emerges in men in their late 20s. Stress, sleep deprivation, isolation in a foreign country, physical injury, and fear could all serve as triggers. But Lars had no history of mental illness, no prior episodes, no warning signs that his friends or family recall. His mother has said this explicitly, in interviews, and with the conviction of someone who has had years to examine every memory for signs she might have missed. There is the theory that the threat was real, that the men from the bar incident had followed through, that what Lars described, 4 men hired to hurt him, following him, was not delusion but fact. Bulgarian police found no evidence to support this. No surveillance footage showed anyone following him. No witnesses corroborated it. But the absence of evidence is not the same as evidence of absence, particularly in an investigation of limited scope conducted in a country he was a stranger in a language he did not speak. None of these explanations are confirmed. Each one is a theory. The honest position, the one the investigators themselves have maintained, is that what happened to Lars Mittank in those final hours is not known. What we have is a documented sequence of behavior. We have footage. We have the words he spoke to a doctor and to his mother. We do not have answers. Sandra Mittank has continued, for more than a decade, to look for her son. She holds this belief not as denial, but as the only version of the story she can live inside. Because the alternative, the simple, quiet arithmetic of a young man running into a forest and not surviving it, offers nothing. No grave, no goodbye, no answers, just absence. The cruelty of a disappearance like this is distinct from other kinds of loss. Grief requires something to grieve. When there is no body, no confirmed fate, no final word, the mind cannot close its file. It keeps the case open, keeps the person present in a kind of suspended state, neither fully gone nor findable. Sandra has had to learn to live inside that suspension for over a decade. To answer the question that people have been asking her since July 2014, we don't know. We still don't know. There is a specific weight to that phrase when a mother says it about her child. 11 years have passed since the cameras in Varna Airport recorded their last frame of Lars Mittank. 11 years in which every theory has been examined and none confirmed. 11 years in which millions of people have watched a 30-second clip of a young man running and have tried to solve it with their curiosity. The case is still officially open. The BKA file has not been closed. Interpol still carries his details. Sandra still runs her website. The forest beyond the airport perimeter is still there. The fence is still there. Somewhere between the moment a construction worker opened a door and the moment Lars Mittank disappeared into the tree line, something happened. Something shifted inside him, or something was confirmed to him, that made running seem like the only possible response. We don't know what it was. We may never know. What we know is what the camera gave us. A young man from Marne, Germany. First time abroad. Running in broad daylight through a busy international airport, past strangers who watched him go, past the ordinary machinery of departure and return, past everything that would have carried him home. Running as if the ground behind him were disappearing, and then, in the next frame, gone. The footage loops. It has always looped. 16 million views and counting, and each of them ends the same way. The fence, the field, the tree line, the absence. Whatever Lars Mittank was running from, whatever truth or terror lived inside those final seconds, he carried it with him into the forest, and he has not yet brought it back.